welcome back to the Unfettering. I am super excited today. We have got a very, very cool musician joining us from Austria. His professional name is Waxamilion, and he is joining us today to talk about his process, how he writes his music, different things. Max, welcome on to the show.
Hello, Giovanni. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. So, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Western Austria in the middle of the Alps, the mountains.
Are
That's
you?
where
Oh,
we are.
wow,
Yeah, in
nice.
a tiny cow town with like 1,000 people or so.
Is
Yeah.
that where you're from?
I'm like half an hour from here in a city. We call it a city, but it's like a place with 14,000 people. So it's also a small town for US terms.
Okay.
But yeah, we moved here like 1 year ago, and it's like a really remote area. And yeah, it's just really nice to be here. But still, if I want to go to Munich or to an airport, to a bigger city, Munich is right there. It's like an hour drive from here,
Okay.
and there's an international airport there. So we're not that cut off, but at the same time, it's very remote.
Okay. So
Kind of,
it
kind of
it
both.
sounds like if you're that close to Munich, then it sounds like the area of Austria is fairly close to Germany. Then is that right?
Yeah, it's right between Germany and Italy.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Well,
We're
I
very
think
far from Vienna, though. Sorry.
no, no, you're okay. You're okay. I mentioned to you that I had lived in Germany for a while,
Yeah, you told me.
and I've been to Austria once or twice, but I think it was only like Salzburg.
Ah,
Um,
okay, right on.
It's from
Nice.
because we were coming in from I don't know if how well you know Germany, but
Yeah,
Garmisch-Partenkirchen,
that's
and
very close to my part of Austria, to Tyrol, because Garmisch-Partenkirchen is that's Bavaria, Bayern, and like right when you go south of there, then you enter the part of Austria where I'm from.
totally okay, cool,
Yeah,
nice,
so it's
yeah,
very close to here.
yeah. The Garmisch-Partenkirchen interest for us was skiing, because
Oh, right on.
there's that German or there's a American resort there for the soldiers and stuff, and
Oh, really?
I've
Is
also
it like a
been.
war thing, post-war thing, or?
Yeah, yeah. It is actually. I think it's the remnants of some sort of installation that they used to have there.
Hmm. But
So,
there's no active soldiers there or anything, or?
well, I don't know if there's an active station there, but it is a resort for American soldiers. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm not exactly sure how the mechanics work. I've also been snowboarding in St. Anton.
Ah, St. Anton, right
Yeah.
on.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
man.
that's Austria. But that's already Vorarlberg, I think. No, it's still Tyrol. Yeah, it's still my area, but it's on the very other end of the valley of like that area where we live. It's like one big valley with one river, and
Yeah.
that's like kind of where how we orient ourselves. Like, and everything that's not in the valley is already like so far out
Far away.
culturally as well. Like their dialect is way different. Like every time when you enter a new side valley, they speak differently. People, it's yeah. The main valley is like our thing that keeps us together, and yeah, it's also weird for people who grow up here. I feel like, or for me at least, and my friends tell me so too, when we go to areas where there's no mountains and like no main valley, it's hard for us to like orient ourselves. And there's so much sun all the time, like the sun comes up early and goes down so late when there's no mountains. That's weird for us as well.
Those two things you said there actually made me think of a couple of things. One is, so does Austria also use Hochdeutsch?
Um, well, we do it for formal speak, and when you're writing, you
Right,
would yeah, you would use Hochdeutsch, yeah. But when you're speaking, you would speak in dialect,
right,
kind
right.
of like an accent.
Totally.
Or
Uh,
I think there is a difference between an accent and a dialect, because in dialect you also use like slang words and stuff.
right.
So words are actually different, but also pronunciation is different. And the dialect that we have is very different from Hochdeutsch. So if Germans come to our area, which they do a lot, they come here to like ski and for holidays, they have a hard time understanding us. Yeah.
That was something that I also experienced when I was in Germany, was learning, and truthfully, this is just a minor example, but like the different word for potatoes, like it would change
Hmm.
from village to village. One was Kartoffeln, one
Ja,
was
das Ostdeutsche
Brombeer,
Wort. Ah,
uh, and then there was a different one. You'd go to another village and someone else had a different version of it.
yeah. We
Um,
say Erdäpfel, which means like Erdäpfel, which is Erdapfel, which would mean like apple of the soil
yeah,
apple, you know, like pomme de terre in
like
French.
French, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. All
yeah.
right. Well, cool, man. I mean, I like that, we can kind of relate on that front. But can you tell me, we're here to talk about your music. Can you tell me about kind of your musical journey? Like, how did you
Hmm.
begin as a musician?
Right. So I started playing when I was like 6, I think, when I was like a small boy, a little boy, and I didn't have a musical family at all. My no one in my family played an instrument, but apparently I wanted to play guitar really bad, and I played classical for 4 years, and then I started playing electric, and yes, somewhere around my youth years, somewhere around like 13 or 14, I just got really into music and um, yeah, just started becoming really into learning technique and watching live band videos. And like it was all I did all the time, mostly for a couple of years there. But it was mostly like rock, and then later metal. And we had this small local instrumental metal band here, and we actually won this band contest, which was nationwide, and we were second place, and I was just 16 or something then, which was really cool to see
Yeah.
that it's like possible to play on a big stage with your own music and stuff. So from then on, it was always in me. Music was always main part of my life, um, because of that, because I had it so early, and yeah, then after school, I wasn't sure what to do, like most young people, whether I should like study or just go to work, or even if I go study, if I should study music or something else, if um, I was thinking about maybe studying physics or something like that. And luckily, I decided to study jazz guitar in Innsbruck. You might have heard of Innsbruck.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you been there? Or,
Uh, I don't think I've been to Innsbruck, no.
okay. It would be close to Garmisch,
To
kind of.
Garmisch, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, that's where I studied jazz guitar for 4 years, I think. And yeah, that was just the best time, man. I learned so much about how to write, how to compose, how to listen, how to play with people. And
yeah,
that was also the time where I really opened up to a lot of different genres. Because before that, I didn't really listen to hip hop or R&B and stuff like that. But when I started studying jazz, I was like, oh, there's this jazz sample in this hip hop song, and it's like you make all these different connections. And yeah, I I don't have any genre borders anymore really since then. There's really only a couple of genres that I have not really listened to extensively, which would be like punk rock. I never got into punk rock for some reason.
yeah.
I can totally understand why people are into it, but it just never vibed with me really for some reason. Yeah. And I mean, like Austrian folk music, that's also something that I don't really enjoy too much.
But well, let me ask you this. Do you guys have the same sort of tent culture around
Yes.
like beer? And so do you know the song Mit die Hände zum Himmel?
Die Hände zum Himmel.
Yeah.
Da. I was playing in a cover band actually for a couple of years, and we played that thing, and we always played in the tents and stuff, yeah, for the drunken crazy folks.
See, I think, I mean, I wouldn't listen to that in my car, but I think that that music is fun when you're at those things. Is that what you're
Right,
talking about as Austrian folk music, or is Austrian
kind
folk
of.
music something different from that?
Yeah, I mean that particular song, that's what you would call Schlager, I guess. And folk music would be even more traditional, not that like tent friendly, not like
Okay.
party music. It would
Yeah.
be more with like actual traditional instruments and stuff, and a brass section, stuff like that. But it's very boring to me. It's always the same chord progressions, just 1 5 5 1 all the time. Then it modulates to the five, so five gets the new one, or
Sure.
to the four, rather, something like that. I'm not sure, but it's just the same all the time. And maybe I just don't like it because I grew up here, because I got really into corridos, actually, Mexican music, and they have a lot of similarities to our folk music here.
Yeah.
But I like the Mexican music so much, man. It's maybe because, the grass is always greener, and it's, I don't know, it's just cringe to me, that Austrian folk music.
It's I think that the sentiment is similar here though. I mean, I think that you do have people that like folk music here, but in general, folk music and country music, depending on where you're from, can be seen as not necessarily like a dumb person's music, but like
Mm,
yeah, it like less sophisticated somehow, maybe.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, I maybe that's a good transition to talk about, kind of your writing style because I feel like on the spectrum of sophistication, Waxamillion is somewhere on, the very, very far side of 10,
Okay, man.
Um, and
Thanks
so I
so much.
wanted, yeah, man. Well, I wanted to truthfully, so much of what draws me to your music, honestly, is listening to the map of your creativity, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
as you listen to these songs, you take like a journey from the beginning of the song somewhere, and then you like come back, and that journey can almost feel like a dream in some ways. Like it's like you get this completely new section, and yet that section has like a dovetail to the previous section. So I wanted to ask you, like, what is your songwriting process? How do you
Mhm.
generate these movements from one section to another, making it seem, like you're guiding us through like a forest in a way,
Yeah, that's actually interesting that you mentioned the transitions between the sections like that, because that's always the hardest part for me. It's easy for me to write one cool snippet, like one cool riff or something, or like a chorus or one catchy idea. And then always making that thing into a song, that's always the really hard part, I feel like. And that's what's taking me a lot of time. And usually it's just, okay, I have this one idea. Now let's move to another place and just stay in the same key, in the same BPM. And I just have a new open blank section in my DAW. I work in Ableton.
Yeah.
And I just try to make something different, and then somehow I try to glue them together. And sometimes it works, and in some songs, it's really, when I listen back to them, I still feel like they don't really make sense from beginning to the end. They don't have uh, do we have that saying in English, a red thread or a thread?
A thread.
A
Yes.
thread,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have that saying, a red thread. When something has a red thread through it, then it's making sense the whole way through,
Sure.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
and that's really what I feel like my music is kind of lacking. I'm really trying to make it all make sense, but it's just really hard for me to make good transitions and stuff. So yeah, that's actually something that I'm still working on to this day. But for my main process, it's mostly starting with guitar, with just me sitting down and like noodling around. Sometimes it's something that's happening quickly when I'm um, between students or something. I'm teaching twice a week in a private music school, and maybe when one student leaves and another one is coming in, and I have like a minute for myself to just sit there and I don't know, I just noodle around, and then hey, that's something cool, and I record it and open it up later and try to record it and make a whole thing out of it. So yeah, mostly it's starting with guitar, and it's almost always a very, very short thing, like not even a bar. Maybe just a few notes, and then those end on a chord or something, and I feel like, yeah, that's interesting. Let's build from that. And
Hmm.
then I'm trying to write the next bar and then the next one. And then I'm always doing a second guitar to that in octaves, and then I hard pan those. So that's kind of my, I wouldn't call it a signature move or something, but that's what I'm doing all the time for all of my songs, really. Having a stereo guitar track in different octaves, or sometimes doing harmonies. And then when I have that for, I don't know, for like 4 bars or 8 or whatever, I'm starting to um, do drums and all the other MIDI stuff, bass and stuff. So yeah, only the guitar is recorded and all the other stuff is all MIDI. So drums are MIDI, where I usually it's starting with doing kick drums following what I'm doing rhythmically with guitars, and
Yeah.
then maybe the hi-hats. Um, yeah, and then with the bass, bass is still hard for me actually to write because I fall back into the pattern of just having the bass play what I'm doing in guitar, but just less.
Right.
And it's really hard still to understand what bass can do because bass is such a powerful instrument, man.
By
It's
itself.
crazy. Like if you have a triad on top, and if it's a high voice triad and you do a different bass note, it can be so many different chords depending on what the bass does. So
Right.
powerful.
Right.
And yeah, that's just something that's still a process for me to figure out.
Totally.
So
Well, and it's funny. I love implied chords, when you've got like a spacing, like someone was talking about a C13 chord being spelled E B flat A.
mhm,
And that those being the only notes that are actually being written on the page. And so I was sitting there thinking like, it's I love that, component of thoughtful music, particularly in jazz, where you've got those high voice triads, almost like upper extension type of ideas. And then
mhm,
you've got whatever the bass is doing that could be implying something totally different.
yeah.
The one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about your music, like lacking like a continuity to it. Like, truthfully, the way that it makes me feel as a listener is almost like a kaleidoscope. Like where like something is kind of like you've got this thing going on and then something new kind of like bubbles in. And what I really, really love, truthfully, what I love about your jams is the time feel, right? Like, I mean,
Mm,
you have in a lot of the jams, you're just doing kind of 4/4, but you're using the rhythm in such a way that it feels different, right? Like,
mhm,
and you've got this really great sense of subdivision usage where it seems like things are constantly kind of changing or you're adding in a beat here or there, and that I think is probably what draws me the most to the music is that sense
nice.
of true creativity. Like that's, when I first wrote to you, it was like, man, your songwriting ability just is so crazy because you move through these sections seemingly, yeah, just like flawlessly. And while I think I understand what you mean by not having a thread, like the style itself, I think is almost served by your freshness of the constant ideas. And I would almost argue that you're kind of making your own style of music by writing this stuff. Like it might be its own genre because there's nothing else like it. I mean, who else is like Waxamilion? Who are your influences? Like where are you drawing this stuff from? Is it just
Right.
where are you pulling it from?
Yeah. One band that I get compared to a lot, which also makes sense to me, is Polyphia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You've heard about them
Of
or
course. Yeah.
their music? Yeah, they're huge now. It's crazy. Um, so what they do is awesome. I love Polyphia, don't get me wrong
Totally.
at all. But
Totally.
what they do is way more in always in 4/4, and always the harmonies that they use are way more simple and understandable, and it's
Sure.
all everything is a lot more built on um memor uh, melodies that you can memorize.
Right.
And I mean that's awesome because one thing that I love so much about Polyphia is that they are bringing back instrumental and mainly guitar music into pop culture. You
Totally.
know, Tim Henson is like a really well-known guy now
Yeah.
online,
Yeah.
and that's just great for the music scene, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I get compared to them a lot, which is just making sense there because they have that crossover from, kind of prog. They are coming from like a prog metal background, and now they mix it with their whole like hip hop vibe thing.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's where that comparison is coming from. Also, what they are all as well have going on sometimes is that two guitars playing in different octaves kind of thing.
Yeah.
They have that a lot as well. So that's making sense to me. But that's really the only thing that I have in common with them. Um, but still, yeah, they're a big influence on my writing still. Just from the way how they play guitar and stuff. So yeah, Tim Henson is definitely a big influence. Also, when I started this project I started in 2018, and I listened to a lot of John back then.
Totally.
You know about John?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, John are awesome. Yeah, and their whole approach where everything sounds so like playful, like a child playing
Yeah.
without having to think about any consequences.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
such a cool approach. Also, that's one approach that I got from, or that where another band inspired me a lot. Between the Bird and Me. Have you heard
Uh,
about them?
you know what? I've heard of them, but I haven't actually listened to the music.
Okay, yeah, you should check them out, man. They're
Okay.
they're kind of heavy. They have really heavy parts and stuff, but they have long songs and they're just crazy. They do so many different things in a song where a song it can start like a ballad and then the verse can be like death metal almost, or like tech death, and then it can go into like a circus sounding or folk music sounding thing, and the whole tune is like 17 minutes long.
Yeah.
And that whole approach, I loved it so much. Like the let's not give a shit and let's just do whatever we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that, yeah, that I'm also trying to incorporate in my music. But with that comes the problem of not having a red thread through your songs. Continuity, that's the word that you use. That's the correct word, actually. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you that my favorite song on the new record, by the way, Waxamilion's new record, Random Notes, check it out. My favorite song from this record is, I don't know how you'd pronounce it. I would pronounce it Newsparity. How do you
Yeah.
pronounce it?
Yeah. It's actually knusperity, but it's not an actual word. It's a made up word. Yeah.
Okay,
But
fair
that's
fair
funny.
enough.
Yeah. With the K not being said out loudly. That makes sense, actually. Yeah. Knusper is a German word which means like if something makes a noise, like when you crumble up a piece of paper,
Yeah.
it kind of makes a knusper noise.
Okay.
Yeah. So knusperity, yeah, it's just a made up funny word.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, in English, when you have a K and an N, usually the K is silent. So the
Silent, yeah,
the
like
word
knee.
like no, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So I was gonna say I love that jam. Like I think you've
Thank
got
you.
like a selective picking thing. Is that
Yes.
you're
Yeah,
doing?
exactly. Yeah.
And then I that song starts out at the beginning and then it kind of ends with a very similar opening, the way that it opens. So I was going to say, like, in that song, I would say that there is a thread, like,
All
because
right. Yeah.
you
That,
totally come all the way back to the beginning, and the way that you redo the melody, it just feels,
hmm,
truthfully, man, like, I'm not trying to gush it's cool, but the
thank
one
you.
thing that I wanted to ask you about was, like, how do you select your guests for the album?
Hmm. Right. So, Nico Vasquez, who played that drum solo on there, he's a friend of mine now, a good friend of mine who is an awesome drummer
Yeah.
uh from Orange County in California. And I met him I can I actually tell the story to it will take a few minutes, but
Please do. Please
it
do.
was really fun because I wanted to travel to the US for quite a while back then, and it was yeah, it was in the year where I started this project. Um, and I just wanted to visit the US really bad because I haven't been before. And so much of the culture that we have here in Europe, is influenced by US culture, music and movies and just modern pop culture. It all comes from the US and specifically Los Angeles, So I went to visit LA just alone. I didn't know anyone, and I went alone on a plane and went there. And I met this guy on Instagram who was, I put on my Instagram story, hey, I'm coming to LA. Who wants to hang out? Hoping that someone would reply. And I met this guy called Dakota. He's an awesome guitar player, and he invited me to come to this jam session in Santa Ana in Orange County. And that's where I met Dakota. And then I stayed at his place, right? And then he told me that he's gonna play this jazz show in a couple of days. I should go there. Okay, let's go there. And I got really drunk that day. And and Dakota was playing with Nico, who then played that solo, that drum solo, on Knosberry. And then we had an idea, or Dakota was saying he has an idea, or wait, let me remember how it was. Somehow we just came to the conclusion that they want to have like a weird opening for their jazz show, right? And I was really drunk. They had another guy there who was um like a punk guy who was living in this. He didn't have a place really. He was living in a rehearsal space somewhere in a cellar in downtown Santa Ana. And yeah, he was like that real punk attitude guy, big afro, and but super humble, super nice, lovely guy. And so we decided to open the show with me being really, really drunk, and I was shirtless, I was topless, and I had my hands handcuffed, and I just started talking really drunk in Austrian German to the crowd, just talking to myself, talking weird shit. And then the punk guy comes running up and grabs the mic and just starts screaming. And I'm pretending to have like I don't know, like some traumatic experience or whatever. And then they started playing in the background and it became this whole crazy thing and people started moshing and it was just awesome. And Nico was playing that night, so that's how I met him.
Nice. Nice.
And yeah, his playing was just really awesome to me. And I later, when I a year after that returned to the US to play my stuff, I asked him if he wanted to play with me, and he was so into the music, man. He's just such an he's really a beast, a musical beast, man. When I got there on my second return to play some shows in LA and around there, I got there and on that first day when I arrived, we had one rehearsal and a show like an hour later. And he just played everything perfectly. He did the notation for everything and played it perfect. And he
Nice.
was soloing on some of the parts, and it was just like, "What's up with you, man? How are you so fucking good?" And yeah, I felt like that song really could use a drum solo, so I asked him, and I think now, if I remember correctly, I think we played it before it was released actually, and I had the idea of maybe, hey, you could do a drum solo there, and it was really cool. So I decided after that, hey, can you actually record one for me? And then
Nice.
we release it like that. Yeah. And yeah, as far as my other guests go, it's usually guitar players that just inspire me, that are cool players. And
Yeah, I
you
saw
know,
you
I,
got I saw you got Jack Gardner on there.
yeah, man, I'm super happy to have him on that record. He's such a super lovely guy as well, by the way. Yeah, really, really cool, nice dude. I
I
met him in Munich when he was playing with Owain. They were supporting Pliny for this last tour that is, I think it was last summer or something, or last
totally.
autumn. And yeah, I talked to Jack on Owain later, and I asked Jack, hey, would you ever want to play a solo on my music because he complimented me on my music. He actually knew me, and that's why I asked him, you know. And he was like, "Yeah, man, I'd be honored." And I was like so stoked about it. Like, what the fuck? Jack Gardner knows me and wants to play on my music. Let's go.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, I like Jack a lot. He's got guy shreds, right?
Yeah,
And I saw you've also got Charlie Robbins on there. Uh,
yeah, man.
he
Yeah, shout
shreds
out to
too.
Charlie. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. And he has this very specific own style as well. You know, he's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not entirely sure that it's their solos, but I'm fairly certain I'm like, I think that's Jack and I think that that's
Um,
Charlie.
oh, you mean in the songs, the
In the
spots in the songs?
songs. Yeah,
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 right.
totally. Um, and obviously I'm not entirely sure, but I'm just kind of guessing. So, um, that brings me actually to another question that kind of on the, I guess not technical side, but on the gear side. Like, what sort of
Mhm.
equipment do you use? What's your guitar brand? You said you use
Right,
Ableton.
right. So I can actually show my guitars here.
That'd be
Just
awesome.
a second. So these are the guitars that I mainly play, and this is a brand from the Netherlands. Can you see this right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And these are just awesome guitars, man. Um,
Wow.
they're called Aristides.
Yeah,
Aristides. I'm not sure how you actually pronounce it in English. Um, and yeah, they only do custom shop, so you have to order a custom shop guitar and wait for a year to get one, and they're quite expensive as well. But their special thing is they're not made out of wood, so the whole thing is like an artificial resin,
huh.
and maybe you can see that here. There's no like the neck and the body,
It's one
they're like
piece.
one piece exactly. So it's really resonant. Like when you just hit the strings a little bit, the whole neck and the body they resonate so much. So it gives you like an instant feedback kind of thing, and I
Yeah,
really like that.
nice.
And yeah, I met the guys at NAM in, I want to say, it was 2020, right before the pandemic, exactly. And they didn't have this headless model out yet, but I really wanted a headless guitar because traveling with a headless guitar is super nice.
I bet.
You can just put in the airplane in the overhead compartment. You don't have to worry about them taking it away from you and it potentially breaking uh, in the luggage compartment.
Right.
So I was asking them, are you maybe doing a headless guitars at some point in the future? And he was like, yeah, wait a few months and maybe you're gonna get lucky, something like that. And they announced a headless model soon after that. And I signed up for one. And like 9 months later, I got this thingy right here. And
Yeah.
I made some videos with it, and they were really stoked about that. And then I became an official artist for them. So yeah, that's really, really cool for me.
Yeah.
It's not like a huge thing where I'm getting free instruments or something, but they're not doing that for their biggest artists either because it's too expensive for them to. They would not just
You're
give away one of those guitars.
you're
But
in a
still,
sweet spot. Yeah.
yeah, just being on their website and knowing that like they also like share my posts and stuff. So that's awesome to have them behind me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can show another one of them actually.
Yeah.
So this is another one from them that I got like a year and a half ago or something, and it's like the very same kind of model, but
Totally.
it has a different pickup configuration, and also this has like a color shift paint on it, so it's shifting between purple and blue, and it also has the signature the inlay on the 12th fret here. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah. That's dope.
So that's saying wax in Japanese. It's the same I have here on my arm actually. So
Oh, awesome. So, man, I had a question to ask you, and then I just got pulled into the guitar. Is that a seven string?
no, it's both six strings.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to get a seven string though again. I had a seven string Ibanez a couple of years ago, and I sold it because I um didn't really know how to use it, you know. And then I had a seven string Strandberg as well. At some point, I sold that as well. You know, I only have three guitars. I have those two headless guitars, and I have one Telecaster, and I use the Tele for playing more normal gigs, because you can't pull up to a cover band show or something with a headless guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I'm also playing in a local Austrian reggae band here. We're gonna play a
Nice.
show tomorrow, and yeah, that's where I use the Tele. You know,
So what's the name of the Austrian band?
it's Rebel Music, so
Rebel
like
Music.
music but with a G at the end, and it's all with Austrian lyrics in Austrian dialect. Yeah,
Nice. So it's your music. It's original.
yeah, it's original music. I'm not writing it. I mean, I've written parts of it, but we write it as a band, you know.
Nice.
And yeah, I've been part of that group for 10 years now, I think. But they've been playing before me already. The guys are all older than me, like they're like 10 years older than I am.
Yeah.
And when I was like 18, I was already listening to their music and like I knew about them and they were like one of the big bands out here. Like when they played one of the big venues here, it was always packed. And a lot of people knew about them, you know. And then later by accident I got to join them. So that was really cool. Yeah.
That's really cool. So then how many music projects are you in?
Oh, really just that one and my solo project, you know. I'm just starting out to work with some people on a project or on like a studio thing that I can't talk too much about yet because it's all in the beginning process right now. But a friend of mine built a really cool and big professional studio kind of close to here, and that's where I'm cooking up some things with some people as well. So
Nice.
yeah, that's really exciting. Like that studio is crazy, especially seeing something like that here. You know, it has the best of the best equipment in there and like huge room and it's all sounding so fucking good, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, working in there is really, really cool. But yeah, I don't have really any other projects other than that. You know, sometimes I'm playing like cover band shows or I haven't done that in a long while though, really as well. Um yeah. I recently wrote a pop song, and I'm thinking about doing that under another alias.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, besides that, there's not really much going on, you know. I was during my time of studying at the jazz conservatory. I was doing like six or seven, eight different projects at the time. You know, I had a jazz band and this metal band and whatever. But now I don't have that much time anymore, you know. I have a family as well. I have two children. I have a son and a daughter. So I have to really use my time as good as I can, you know. And I also have to teach just for the money. And yeah, there's not that much time left anymore for things. So I would rather have just one or two projects and really focus on them rather than having a lot of projects.
Sure. So actually that brings up a good uh topic because part of what I like to talk about on this podcast is talking with musicians about how they make it work as a musician. So I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you, one, are you a full-time musician or would you consider yourself a full-time musician? And then two, if that's the case, what are the things that you do to generate revenue for yourself? We don't have to talk about the numbers, just what are you
Right,
doing to pick
right.
up money for yourself?
Right. Well, that's still the biggest struggle for me. I gotta admit, man. Like the making ends meet is the hardest part as a musician. It's really, really, really hard. And I'm in a really lucky position where I don't have a lot of monthly um continual costs, you know. I don't really have to pay rent. The house that we live in, we built ourselves. And
Nice.
we don't really I don't have huge amount of rent payments or anything like that each month. And yeah, I'm making like half of my ends meet through teaching. I still enjoy teaching though, but probably if I would make more from music itself, I would teach a little bit less, like one day less. Um, because right now it's like 2 days a week where I'm teaching. And yeah, besides that, some amount of my income comes from Spotify. It's not that little actually, and that's like my main focus right now, getting my Spotify numbers up so I can pay my actual monthly costs just through Spotify. That would be like my like if I can achieve that, man, that's fucking freedom for me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really that would be such a big career goal. And yeah, another thing that we have in Austria where I was very, very fortunate is we have really good um, government support for artists. And I was really lucky 2 times to get like a into this support program where our local government um, gave me a really, really nice financial support twice, you know. And I'm using that for the project, you know. So I'm trying to reinvest it and, you know, make content with it and stuff. Um, but yeah, that's it's really still something that I'm struggling with, the whole money thing. But I would rather struggle and try um rather than just give up and work a 9 to 5 and do music on the side. I would die with that, man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just love the struggle, man. I mean, I don't love the struggle, but I love trying, you know.
Yeah.
It's, I have those moments where I'm really rethinking, overthinking. I just had a like a phase where I was doubting myself super hard, where I was like thinking, if is this music thing really actually what I want to do? Because I wasn't coming up with anything good, you know. It's when you're sitting there for 2 or 3 weeks and nothing good comes up in the creative process, you know, then you start doubting yourself. And I had a really big low like that right now. And then something new pops up, you know. It's always at those moments where you have to just push through it. And at some point, you will find that new thing that you really, really, really like. And then you
Yeah.
know why you did that, you know.
Yeah.
And I would rather go through that and not make or make a very small amount of money that I can just kind of live off, you know, rather than making a little more like more comfortable living financially. But
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 hating your job. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the truth is that like that's kind of how all this started for me, except on the back end, because
Hmm.
I also am, started music as a young man. And when I was growing up, my parents always said, hey, you've got to have a regular job, right? Because
Hmm.
musicians are going to starve, unless you're famous or something like that. And I always bought that, like and so I ended up going to law school. And so
Hmm.
now, like what I do for my full-time income is do legal work. And the truth is that like, while I enjoy it on the level of, the mental exercise, I
Hmm.
would much rather be playing music full time, right?
Right.
And so like the thought process in the unfettering is how to get to that place. Like
Hmm.
and talking to musicians about what they're doing, hopefully generating interest in a community, right? To talk about that sort of stuff because I think that there's a lot of people that are there. You see guys like you on Instagram and you're just like, "Hey, these guys are beasts. They're absolute beasts and they're becoming famous." Like I want to do that. Everyone thinks that they want to do that, right?
Right.
So from that standpoint, like and it's interesting to hear you say that it's a struggle because I would say that people want to be like you, right? Like people see you and they're like, hey, this is a professional musician. He's putting out awesome stuff and he's a full-time musician. I would love that. And then listening to you, you're saying, well, it can be a little hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, that's something that I have to remind myself of from time to time as well, and I'm really trying to do that actively. Um, you know, thinking back to how I would how I was thinking a couple of years back when I started this project. And when someone told me that I'd be in this position like 6 years later where I am now, then I would be so stoked about that, you know? Like I should compare myself to myself more. Like, it's easy to compare yourself to other people on
Other
Instagram
people.
and be like, hey, I want to be that guy, you know? But when you compare yourself to yourself and you see how much progress you made, that can make you a really happy person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm really trying to do that actively. And yeah, but the thing is also with the whole full-time musicianship, from when on would you count it as like a full-time thing? Because I can definitely not live off my solo project, you know. If I would just be doing Waxamilion, I couldn't be living off that, you know.
So I guess what
That's
that's a great thing that you're bringing up. So I guess what I mean by full-time musician in this particular case is someone who generates all of the money that they make through music, whether that be selling music or teaching, or gigs
nice.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, because yeah, I think that at the end of the day, like what is being captured in that is that the way that you generate revenue is through your artistic expression, right? And I think
right.
that people have that idea as being like, well, I would love to make money through my art, right? And so
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of people understand the mechanics of that all the time, right? Like they're just like, oh, it's just selling music, it's just writing a good tune, and then I'll be famous. And I've been talking to a bunch of musicians who actually say, I have multiple sources of income and revenue because
Yeah,
I need them, basically.
yeah, yeah, totally. That's making sense a lot. Um, yeah. I mean, I could also do more cover band gigs, stuff like that. That's something that you can always do, I feel like. If you're well versed in playing with other people and it takes some skill to do those cover gigs and do them really well. But if you're in a position to do that musically, then that's something that you can always do to earn some money, you know. The teaching thing is something else where I feel like teaching has to be really for you, and there's people that cannot teach
Right.
and or they just don't like it, you know. I was struggling at the start with teaching a lot, but now I enjoy it, man. It's so cool. Especially teaching children. Like if you have a child that's motivated, that's like really into it, it's the best, man, because that's the future, you know.
Right.
That's like actual future music happening there.
Right.
And that's just so awesome to see, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, the thing is still like, do you actually count that as being a full-time musician when you're teaching? Because yeah, it's you're sitting at your instrument and stuff, but you're teaching someone else something. So you're not actually like writing or playing or doing something from yourself. You know, it's one of those definition kind of things. And I think some people would say if you're some of your income comes from teaching, then you're not a full-time musician or whatever. I'm not saying that, but yeah, the way I'm doing it now, I'm really happy that I can do it that way and that I don't have to do anything else on the side. And I
Yeah.
hope that it can stay that way. I
Yeah.
really, really hope it can. Yeah.
Well, you know what I was gonna say, that I really enjoyed watching the Super Bloom Ableton discussion because I also use
Thank you.
Ableton. And
Nice.
so
Are
I
you on the
was
new version? Sorry to interrupt you. Are you
on
on 12 or?
12, yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Awesome.
Um, you know, I was thinking like that you've got a lot of like production knowledge, right? Like watching those videos. And I was just gonna say I really enjoy that content. So, any more of that
Nice.
that
Thank you.
you've got, I'd definitely love to see it. So let me ask you this: do you have any plans to formalize like an education type product, maybe teaching
Maybe.
production in Ableton, or maybe guitar, your particular style of guitar playing?
Yeah, that's some ideas that I was always already from the start kind of, you know, thinking about if I could do like a guitar course or something like that or production course. But I still feel like I'm not the right person to do it because I'm still so if I compare myself to other people, I'm still so bad at all these things. That's I'm really in such a bad mind space there. Also with production, thank you for the compliment and stuff. But when I see other people producing, I'm like, dude, I'm such a noob. It's crazy. Why would I be doing a production course when there's people out there like, I don't know. Have you seen this? Maybe if you're into Ableton, have you seen this German guy called Virtual Riot? He's a dubstep producer.
I think so. Yeah.
He does this generative, uh not AI stuff, but he makes instruments where you can build your own like your own drum one shots and stuff, and he
Right.
built it all inside Ableton, and that's like so fucking crazy to me, like how you can know that program that well, that DAW. Like that guy, he should be doing production courses. Why should I be doing that? But yeah, maybe I shouldn't be thinking about it that way. And I mean, I could still do production courses for total beginners and stuff.
Right. I
Um,
think what it is, truthfully, because you bring up a good point, right? Like, well, I'm not an expert. Why would anyone listen to me? And I'll tell you, because they like you and the music, right? Like
mm,
that literally, it was the only reason I watched the Super Bloom video was because I otherwise liked the music. And I sat there and was thinking like, man, this guy knows a ton about production in Ableton. So that gives you a couple of pieces of information. One, there's a ton of people out there who know a lot less about Ableton than you do. And two, the fact that you are making music that people like gives you credibility about production in Ableton, right? Like
mm,
when you're explaining to people what the process is, of how you write your songs, you're basically laying out for them, and this is how I work. And people are like, if I want to make music that sounds like Waxamilion, I'm going to listen to him, right? Like explain it. So I don't know. I think that it's worthwhile. The imposter syndrome, I think, is something that
yeah,
everyone kind of deals with. That sense of like, why should anybody listen to me? But you
yeah,
kind of you kind of get to that place where hopefully you get to that place where someone tells you there's a reason that people are interested in listening to what you have to say.
right, yeah, yeah. Thank you, man. That's actually really, really uplifting when you say something like that.
Well, hey, I this has been a really great talk. And I wanted to thank you for making the time to come
Totally.
on with us here.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah,
I actually wanted to ask you, where in the US are you?
I'm in Colorado, close to
Oh,
Denver.
nice.
Yeah.
Close to Denver. Nice. So you're close to the mountains as well.
In fact, that brings us back. You had said that the mountains are like a geographical thing for you guys. Like if you're
Yeah.
not around the mountains, you don't know. It's the same
Yeah.
for us out here. The mountains are always west. So if you
Ah, right
if you're
on.
looking at the mountains, it's always west, right? So
Nice. So you're not in the mountains, but in the plains?
yeah, we're like in the foothills right outside of, you can see the mountains. We're not in the mountains. Yeah.
Ah, right on. I
Yeah.
see. Nice, man. I would love to go there and see that.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're ever in town, let me know. But
Oh, nice. Thank you, man. I'll let you
yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But hey, for everybody listening, I want you guys to check out Waxamillion. Check out his new record, Random Notes. Um, what are your social medias?
My Instagram is just Waxamillion. Always spell it with one L because the Waxamillion with two L's is a rapper from Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I have a TikTok as well, but I'm not really active on there. Yeah, my main thing is Instagram and yeah, Spotify. I
Okay.
Spotify is like social media almost as well, I feel like.
And YouTube.
And
Follow that
YouTube,
man.
right.
Follow Wax on YouTube. And yeah, this has been the Unfettering podcast, where we talk about life, music, and how we're going to make some serious changes to things. Wax, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to be posting these episodes on Spotify and YouTube, so check them out over there on those platforms if you get a chance. We're going to be continuing this interview series with other upcoming artists. So keep an eye out for those episodes as well. And until then, this has been The Unfettering. I am your host, Giovanni, and we will see you in the next one.